RAVAROR mobile shelving unit from IKEA on today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to Clueless Dad. Today we're going to assemble a RAVAROR metal case on casters. So this is basically a mobile shelving unit from the RAVAROR system. I'm going to start assembling it, and in the meanwhile I'll also explain a little bit more about it on the side. So let's get started and stay tuned. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the RAVAROR, it's basically like a whole system from IKEA, but for kind of like flexible use spaces where you have like maybe a small studio apartment that you're using as your bedroom and your home office and your dining table and your entertainment space. And the idea is that everything comes with wheels, or not everything, but most of the stuff comes with wheels, and you kind of wheel it around depending on the situation you need. So it comes with 16 of these guys. It's basically just a hex nut on one side, threaded rod on the other, and these screw in to hold the shelves into the sides. So pretty simple. So one thing that's important to note is that these have different sides. So the outside, the one that goes on the outside of the shelves, has a bigger hole, and this whole thing goes in. And the inner side has the small hole, which is obviously where the threads come out. So just make sure that you put it the right way. I think it's almost impossible to do it wrong, but anyway, you've been warned. So in our case, we're not using it at home, we're actually using a workspace. And the reason I got this is because I needed some storage to store equipment in our YouTube studio, and I wanted to have it on wheels. And this is a relatively nice, high quality item on wheels, so it should be pretty sturdy, and it's relatively affordable. So one of these guys cost about 115, 120 US, and hopefully should last a while. It's made out of metal, so it won't fall apart. Okay, so I'm gonna cheat and use a power driver, but start everything by hand. Make sure that nothing gets cross-threaded before you use one of these, otherwise you're gonna ruin it. And in this case, you can't tighten these too much until you get all the shelves in, so keep it really loose. Just get halfway in and then stop, and then go back, do it again once it's all assembled, and then tighten by hand. Tighten everything by hand, and keep this on a super low torque so you don't strip anything. Okay, so let's keep going. It's relatively easy to assemble. As you can see, it's basically prefabbed. You're just screwing in the two ends and the shelves. And yeah, you just need basically an Allen wrench. You can use a power driver, which I'm doing here, or you can just use the included Allen wrench, as always with IKEA. So anyway, I hope this is interesting. I'll come back at the end to talk a little bit more about my impressions and show some details. Okay, so next up we have to put the casters on. You see I've done one already, and here's another one. Some of them have a brake, some of them don't. There's two of each, so put them on opposite ends, probably a good idea. This one is a little tricky to get on because you have to drive this hex head screw, and as you can see, the wheel's kind of in the way. So there's two ways around that. One is this has the little ball joint on there, so it can still actually get in there if it's all the way down. So if it's all the way up, it kind of does too, but it's going to get crossed. So anyway, you can do it that way, or with this little stubby end, you can get it in nice and firmly seated, and you're going to need to do this to tighten it. But because this is a caster that rotates, hypothetically, you can just keep rotating it this way if you want it. So what I would do is actually get it started this way, get it going, and then at some point, once it's going, this is getting a little tiresome. So I will just do that until it's tight, and it doesn't matter. Okay, so just keep doing all four of those and you should be fine. And don't lose this thing, because it's probably hard to find an Allen wrench that's this stubby. So what I would suggest is probably just like tape it onto the bottom here. So 5 years from now, if you want to tighten these guys, you can. Otherwise, you might be up the creek. So anyway, let's keep going. Okay, so I maybe take that back. This is a piece of junk. It's already stripped just from that last caster. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and tighten everything. I was gonna tighten it by hand with this, but because it's already basically coming off, I will just use the power driver on a higher torque setting and it should be fine. Okay, so here we are. What do you guys think? Yeah, not too bad. It should take you probably 15, 20 minutes to put together, maybe a little faster if you're using power driver, but can't really do too much wrong because it's pretty simple. Just make sure you tighten everything. One big thing, and I did notice this in some of the reviews, but it is like a gong. It's basically every time you're going to touch anything metal on here or anything hard, it's going to bump into that. So if you're using this in your bedroom, that might be a problem. If you're using it in your film studio, actually might be a problem also. But yeah, in this case, just expect it to be noisy. I think once you put enough stuff on here, probably won't be quite as bad, but it's definitely not silent. The finish isn't perfect. Like there's some bumps and stuff here, but that's probably better. Like if you get a scratch in this, I think you could just spray paint it or whatever you wanted to do. I can imagine it will come loose sooner or later. So yeah, definitely you want to tighten it, but it's relatively easy to do that. It is actually a little bit higher than I expected. So that's, I don't know, what, like 120, something like that, 120 centimeters by the time you put on the wheels and everything. It's a little bit higher. It's bigger than I expected to. So looks good, works good. I think it can fit a lot of stuff. Strength-wise, actually pretty decent. It's rated at 20 kilograms per shelf. And so hypothetically, that means 44 pounds here, 44 pounds there, 40 pounds. So total with 4 shelves, it could handle 80 kilos. I weigh slightly less than 80 kilos, maybe more with change in my pocket and whatnot. And I was actually able to stand on this with some of my weight on the top shelf and some of my weight on the bottom shelf. So hypothetically 40 kilos and 40 kilos. So it creaked a little bit, but it didn't bend. Maybe if you put everything in the middle, it would maybe buckle. But if you spread it out over there, you could definitely put more than 20 kilos per shelf if you need to. Because this is kind of high though, I definitely recommend putting anything really heavy on the bottom. Don't put anything that's going to fall on top of a kid up here. As you can see, the wheels actually stick out, so it's more stable than the equivalent size shelf, slightly more stable, but then again, it also can roll. That's actually also bad because then that means you can't directly touch it against the wall. So you can't even anchor it against the wall up at the top anyway if you wanted to. So keep that in mind when you're loading as well. Okay, so that's it for today. If you guys have any questions or comments about the RAVAROR, anything you'd like me to answer, do let me know in the comment section below. If you'd like any follow-ups on any of the other IKEA stuff that I've been doing, there's actually quite a lot of it still here. So just let me know if you want more info on that. I'm happy to do follow-up reviews as well. So that's it. See you guys later. Bye. Having the stroller with me all the time up in the overhead bin. As soon as we get off the plane, pull it out, unfold it, and walk off. Literally that could save you 15, 20 minutes right there.